Saturday, December 26th, 2015. Derek Davis here with Rob Vino and SportsBettingToday.us and Rob Vino Sports. Lots of bowl games today. Let's go here with number 229, 230, Southern Miss and Washington. 2:20 p.m. Eastern kickoff here in the heart of Dallas Bowl. Game played at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas. The old Cotton Bowl, not the nice, new, shiny Jerry World complex out in Arlington. This is in East Dallas. Weather-wise in this one, Rob, should be wet. Should be steady rain in this one. Winds 15, 16, 17 miles per hour from the southeast. Southern Miss, Rob, with head coach Todd Monken, had done a really good job here this year winning games against the spread. 10-3 against the number this year, Rob. Southern Miss can put points up and put them up in a hurry. Todd Monken, a Mike Gundy disciple, which comes with a little bit of the air raid offense. But Monken also coached under Dick Cutter when they both were with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Monken with a nice mix of pro style and air raid. Very tough to defend. But Washington, talent-wise, Rob, is going to be superior. Team speed, team strength. Should all favor Washington. The Huskies, also a team that can score. But more importantly, defensively, kind of an enigma, Rob. You never know who you're going to get with these Husky teams as far as their defensive unit. They held Southern Cal to 12 points, held Arizona to 3, held Oregon State to 7, held Washington State to 10, but struggled against the likes of Arizona State, Utah, and Stanford, as well as Cal. But again, they will have the edge talent-wise on Southern Miss. Depth-wise, really no comparison when you look at the two teams. So I'm going to put the onus on Southern Miss's defense, Rob. If Southern Miss is going to cover this game, it's going to have to they're going to have to need a lot of help from that side of the ball. What do you think about that?
The weather could be the great equalizer here in this game, Derek. We'll see. It seems to be a game where rain, thunderstorms certainly going to take a little bit of precedence over the actual play on the field. You wonder which side benefits from this. Hey, we've seen rain in a couple of bowl games here so far. I know it did not affect Georgia Southern whatsoever. Perhaps from that, you would say the running team gets a little more of an edge. Washington would be the power team in this instance. This game is also played on a grass field at the Cotton Bowl, the heart of Dallas Bowl is this one. And on a grass field with heavy rain, it does become more difficult for both sides. If we look just at the fundamentals here, I think it's difficult for both sides, but I would say that it's a little more difficult for the Southern Miss defense. And you pointed to this in your analysis, because they don't face power football teams, or they didn't face any power football teams really aside from Nebraska on their schedule this year. They're in Conference USA, where most everything is finesse, throw the football around. Nobody necessarily trying to jam it right down at them at the line of scrimmage, which is what Washington will do. Washington is going to look to take charge in the trenches on both sides. I don't know that Southern Miss is going to be able to stand up to them in those instances. Obviously, quarterbacking, huge here. Nick Mullins has had a great year for Southern Miss. And, of course, freshman Jake Browning certainly performed well for Washington. A couple of games that he was out or not present this year, they missed him. So I think Browning, a steadying force for Washington. Mullins has a lot of weapons to work with here. Not only is Southern Miss a good passing team, but they run the football very well with Jalen Richard and Ito Smith. Again, this is a spread team with a lot of balance. Head coach Monken's team has shown balance all season long. When they do go to the air, Mike Thomas is a stud wide receiver, over 1,200 yards receiving so far this season, but the receiving core is deep. They go to the backside of the backfield. There's a lot to defend when you're playing Southern Miss. But Washington has seen stuff like this. Unlike Southern Miss, which has not really faced power football this year or power offenses, Washington does see spreads. Washington does see balanced spreads. You look at their last game against Washington State, which is an air raid team, and they shut Washington State down, only allowed 10 points. The last 4 games of the season, the Washington Huskies actually outgained their opponents total yardage wise in every single game. 381 to 346 advantage over the Utah Utes. We've seen Utah win already this bowl season. A 547 to 397 advantage over the Arizona State Sun Devils. Certainly Arizona State, under the direction of Todd Graham, a spread balanced style offense. They like to run it first a little more than they do throw it, but they are a balanced offense. Big 150-yard edge there in that game for Washington. I think the final score, they lose by 10, a little bit misleading. The big yardage differential in their favor, and they only allowed 27 points to Arizona State's explosive offense. Played Oregon State, which had a bad year. Obviously, I don't think we can make much out of this game, but they did hold a 482 to 257 advantage. Here's my biggest thing with Washington this year, and I've said it all season long on the Sports Memo podcast. I cannot get over the job that head coach Chris Peterson has done with this defensive unit. When you look around the NFL and you realize that they had 4 defensive players drafted into the NFL last year, and you look around and you see Marcus Peters, a cornerback from Washington, taking a pick 6 in for a touchdown last week. When you see Danny Shelton starting on a defensive line for the Cleveland Browns, when you see Kakahi in the middle of a defensive line, I believe it was with, I'm missing the NFL team that he's with right now, but again, another starter from last year. Shaq Thompson, they're all everything linebacker, safety, running back last year. These are guys that left big voids in the defense for the Washington Huskies. And somehow, some way, Chris Peterson filled those things, and they have been a better defense in a lot of ways this year than they were last year. I don't think there's much comparison between these two from a defensive standpoint. Washington is superior. They've shut down good offenses all season long for Southern Miss, a team coming off their Conference USA Championship loss to Western Kentucky. I think it's a tall task. There's a class difference between conferences, CUSA and Pac-12, and I would expect Southern Miss, anybody who's ever seen head coach Monken in an interview knows that they're going to be energetic today. They're not coming to lay down. They're going to come to play. I think the question you have to ask yourself when you're handicapping this game is, if that emotion wears off, can they still stand up fundamentally, and does the rain help them enough in this contest? It'll be interesting. I want to see if Mullins can be protected well enough against this Washington defensive front. Washington's offensive front has allowed sacks this year, so Southern Miss might try to throw extra guys up on the line of scrimmage and get to them too. But I just feel like the power football, the way Washington plays defense, I think that's all too much for Southern Miss here. We've seen the game be bet down as low as 7.5 at this point in time, and I think that's really due to the weather situation, because bettors are absolutely pounding the total right now. We see it go from the opener of 56 down to 51, 51.5. I like the Washington side here a little bit. Southern Miss has had a great season. Just don't know if they stand up with Washington toe-to-toe in this game. As far as the total is concerned, 51.5. Like I say, on a grass field, it can get a little bit tougher than what we saw in the Georgia Southern game with the rain, but on an artificial turf surface was a little better footing for the players in that contest. We'll see if the Cotton Bowl field holds up. But like I say, I probably have a slight lean towards Washington here.